Hello, and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsey Baroker, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Jeff Poole.
And I'm Joe Lalo.
And it's just the three of us this week. We are going to be talking a little bit about what's working for us with advertising, answering a couple questions on staying motivated and not getting distracted when you're writing. And I also released a new novel about 3 weeks ago, a standalone novel that was definitely not written to market. So I'm going to be talking about, well, we're all going to talk about some things you can do when you're marketing a standalone novel, which is not as easy as a series, to be quite honest. Most of the success stories we've had on here are people with 8-book series, and but we're going to talk about it because sometimes you just have one idea that you want to put out there. Before we jump into all that stuff, do you guys want to share if you have any new news?
All right, I'll start. I'm going to refer to the ye old big company as the organization. Anybody who knows me, I do not like this organization, so we should now know who that is. I had another snafu with them. They apparently have the ability to block. That is a big red word inside your status there in your books. Block a title from their stores if by chance, according to them, they find your book elsewhere on the internet for free. Maybe if it's because it's a paid book, they find it for free. They don't like that. I don't know if that's what the terminology is. But essentially, my snafu came when I get this snarky email from the organization that says, my May the Fang Be With You title, Pirates of Persia #1, that one all of a sudden flagged. They really absolutely hate it. Somebody apparently somewhere had pirated the book and it was available for free elsewhere, and I'm going straight to hell because I'm allowing this to happen. To which I asked them to provide links and evidence that this was the case, because I mean, usually if I see something that, it's one of my books is available online elsewhere for free, I'll invoke all kinds of nasty legal letters that I've got copies of and make them take it down. So I've said, okay, let me know where it is. I'll take it down. Nothing. Instead, they go like, okay, well, what you need to do is you need to go to your copyright office. And this is me talking on the phone with the organization's direct publishing support. Got that one right this time. And they said, you need to go to your copyright office. You need to get a legal form with their stationery logo on it that says that you are the owner of this particular book and you have not made it available anywhere. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I am an indie author. I don't have a copyright office I can just go to. You need to provide links provide links that tells me where this stuff is. And they kept on saying, well, this organization's content review management team is the one that located my file elsewhere, and they've got this information. And kill surprise here, they don't have direct phone numbers, only email support. And I'm like, okay, well, can you at least submit a message to them? Maybe you have instant messaging or something. And they said, well, look, I'll see if I can get someone on see if I can get someone's attention there. 5 minutes later, nope, can't do it. So we're just going to submit something by email and let them know what the problem is. I'm like, okay, fine. Here's my contact information. Here's my cell phone number. Here's my email. Whatever it takes. Okay, this is really stupid here. No one will tell me essentially where I went wrong. And long story short, 3-4 days later, it's still nothing's happening. I keep calling up and just being as polite but firm as possible to the organization's tech support, because they aren't exactly the sharpest tools in the shed. And again, I keep getting the same information over and over and over, that only this one department has all this information. So it was time to use my ace in the hole, which was to contact the CEO of said organization. I did once before and it had worked to my benefit, so I figured, why not try again? Sure enough, in less than 12 hours, I get the email back from that elusive department that apparently is now listening to me. And they said, oh, upon further review, your book does not violating any of our regulations or terms or anything. Your book's back for sale. Sorry for the inconvenience. Have a nice day. That's pretty much word for word what the email said. And I'm just ready to blow a gasket. I'm like, stupid idiots, but whatever, at least it's back up and running. So I know we've gone on record of saying that if by chance, you find your book pirated elsewhere online, don't worry about it. It's not really worth your time to look into it. Maybe you might want to consider it. And the only thing I think about it now that I think about it, if your book has a price tag, even if it's only 99 cents, if it's available free, maybe that's what trips their sensors. I don't know what, but I wouldn't think that if they find the book elsewhere is cause for concern, but that's the only thing I can think. And that was my little snafu with the organization, the second one. Comments or
It
concerns?
sounds a bit, actually, the second time I'm hearing this, we had a failed recording the first time, but it actually sounds like a copyright thing, like maybe somebody else, because usually they just make your book free if they find it free somewhere
Yeah,
else.
and that's what I couldn't figure out too. It's like, okay, well, price match the dumb thing if you absolutely have to. Why the heck then block it? But yeah, now, yeah, you're right. Now that they're talking about this whole copyright thing, is okay. Well, this is definitely my book, and obviously I don't have a copyright office to complain to there. But my big issue was they would not provide evidence or of where they found this anywhere. And it wasn't until I griped to the CEO of this organization that all of a sudden this elusive department is now paying attention and say, "Oh, okay, we looked. Nope, our bad. Have a good one." They wouldn't, admit fault for it. They just, or they still didn't want to say, "Okay, well, we thought we found it over here," but instead, nope. Sorry, here we go. Everything's good now. So it was just aggravating. But also on the organization front, I created some new 3D box covers. I found this really cool website, covervault.com. There's a whole lot of templates on there. A guy by the name of Mark apparently does them all. If your box set is only 3 titles or less, I believe, you can get the templates free of charge. The only thing he requires is just leave a comment saying, "Hey, I'm going to use this for this. Thanks, great job." And that's all it really takes. If you have a 4, 5, or 6, or anything all the way up to, good God, like 25 on there, they actually have the premium package, which I think is like $50 or so, but you still can get it, really nice box set cover there. And it does require some Photoshop knowledge with the layers and everything, and it's really not too hard to figure out, especially if I can do it. But it comes up some really beautiful covers. I redid my Balkan Chronicles omnibus, had a crappy cover in place for that. Now it looks fantastic. And I also did another one for my Tales of Lantari. First Tales of Lantari box is out, and with the intent of, yes, I'm going to get that darn BookBub ad yet, but and of course, and I was also going to talk about Cameo, which is a new website, new service for fans and celebrities to try and get in contact with one another, where a celebrity can join this cameo.com. They can say essentially, "I'll be willing to give you a video shout out for X amount of dollars there." And I helped a couple celebrity friends of mine, the Beans, Michael Bean and Jennifer Blanc Bean, and in response, in return, they're saying, "Okay, well, we'll go ahead and do one of these things for you." I'm like, "Okay, well, I don't, okay, I was sure." And they're like, "What do you want us to say?" I'm like, "Huh, I'm an indie author, and everybody would love a celebrity endorsement. So what do you guys say about this?" And ordinarily, I'll say I would have concerns about trying to get a celebrity to endorse something that maybe they've never even looked at or read or whatnot. But thankfully, they have copies of my book, because I've met them in person quite a few, not quite a few times. I met them a bunch of times, spent some time with them, and I know she's a fan of the books and whatnot. So they said, "Yeah, sure, no problem, they'll do it." But something might actually consider looking into, especially if you can get maybe something like a copy of your book to them and they're willing to look at it. But it's really cool just that they'll make a personalized video for you, so depending on the price.
All right, I will put the link to that, cameo.com, although it kind of sounds like unless you know the
Yeah,
celebrity,
that's what I'm saying.
it's
It's
going to
really
be a
cool to
long
do
shot.
it, but it kind of would. There's some caveats there where you want to make sure they're okay doing it, and you're okay. Like, okay, if they have a chance they haven't read the book, you don't want to have like a false video review where they say, "Oh yeah, they're paying me money. I'll say whatever the heck you want me to say." But I don't know. That's just me.
All right, well, and I'll put the notes on the covervault.com too, because the 3D book covers, I've definitely had more luck getting BookBubs on the box sets. And if you don't want to pay, a lot of people will just take book one cover and then turn it into a 3D thing. And there's software that can do that. So that can be useful if you don't want to have a whole new
Yeah,
cover
I,
and
did.
pay
I
for it.
did my own 3D box cover for the Corgi case files, and granted, I think it looks nice, but man, that thing took me 4 or 5 hours and learning on how to do it. And I was getting ready to do my Tales of Lantari one there, and I stumbled across a reference to this guy at Cover Vault. I looked over there, and sure enough, he said, "If it's 3 or less titles, feel free to download one of these things. Just say thanks." And I said thanks and tried it out. In like less than an hour, I had a really gorgeous looking cover, and I was like, "This is worth mentioning."
All right, very cool. Joe, would you like to share your news?
Sure. The main thing that I have going on is Rogue Derelict, which is my entry into the Fallen Empire series, formerly Kindle Worlds, now available wide. It's tomorrow will be re-released, and that's nice. A couple things I learned over the course of that process, one of which I could have really taken advantage of if I'd planned better. Because it was previously available, Amazon had in their systems 20 reviews for this thing. When they delisted it, those 20 reviews went away, but it turns out you can just have them link the old version of it to the new version of it. You have to send them an email, but they'll do it. And then all of those reviews came back. So then I had a pre-release novel with 20 reviews on it that were legit. If I had known that was going to happen, I probably would have tried desperately to get a BookBub for release week. I would have had enough reviews and a high enough average. I would have had a fighting chance of doing so. It just so happens I managed to get a BookBub on a different one of my books, and this would have been within the 1 month you can't try again period. So no opportunity there. But it's a thing to keep in mind, I suppose, if you ever find yourself in a situation to be re-releasing a book, that you might end up with a book prior to official release that qualifies for some of the promotional thresholds that places have.
That might be useful for anybody that was trad published and got the rights back on something old. Maybe they can get, even if they're updating the cover and everything and releasing it on their own, it might be worth checking to see if they've got like 40 reviews or something from the 1990s release.
Yep.
Maybe they can get them. That would be great.
Absolutely. The information that basically the only information you need to know is the Amazon ID number of the original release and of the new release. And once they have both of those pieces of information, if they deign to do so, they can link the 2 pages and all of the stats will come back. So that's cool. And the other thing associated with that is I started a Patreon. The official reason for the Patreon is I don't know what to do with anything that's shorter than a certain length. Basically anything less than a novel I don't like to release separately. For a while I was trying to do a short story every month, but I realized I was just going to end up with my entire library getting swamped in 99-cent short stories, and I didn't like the way that was going to look. So I was trying to find another thing to do with all the short stories that I've accumulated over the years. And a Patreon, where if you support me at least $1, you'll get 1 free new short story every month. And to sweeten the deal, if you support it $3 or $5 or $15, you get a novella. If it's a novella, you'll get that. If it's a novel, you'll get that. Or if it's an audiobook, you'll get that. So I launched that, and tomorrow with the Rogue Derelict release is the first Patreon release in which they'll get never before released short story, and they'll also be getting Rogue Derelict, and they'll also be getting one of my old self-produced audiobooks, just as like the grand opening. And the tricky thing about the audiobook part, because BookFunnel can supply all the rest, but BookFunnel doesn't do audiobooks yet. So I have had to find a way to deliver audiobooks to people. We actually discussed this a little bit before. I'm going to be using a Dropbox link because there's only 3 people who supported that level so far, so I can sort of hold their hands through the process. But also you could probably use, as I believe Lindsey said she did, any promo links that ACX might have given you is another way to deliver these things if you have enough of them.
Yeah, I've done both on my own Patreon. I kind of do the same thing with the higher level folks. Like everybody's paying for the novel and they get the novel like 2 weeks early. But then I do I'm starting to do bonus books, old books that I had released for the higher level supporters. And I did the audiobook the last time. I just put up the second one. And some people can do the Dropbox. I shared it and they grab the files and they're good to go. And other people are like, could I have a code, please? And I understand because I have the Audible app and it's obviously easier just to have it in the library there than to mess with like whatever other player you're going to put the MP3s on. But it's a workaround for now. I know BookFunnel has mentioned that maybe someday they will have support. It's just that the audio files are so huge that it's a lot more expensive for them. Do you have anything else let me ask you about the Patreon before we move on. Doing a short story every month, now that you've been doing it for a while. See, I found it takes me like a week to do a short story where like 2 weeks to write a novel. Not hyperbole, not exaggerating. So for me, it's hardly really worth doing those things unless I have an idea and I'm just super excited about it. And then I'll do it as a free bonus or something. Do you find that by doing all the extra short stories, do you think that takes away from how many novels you can write, or do you just enjoy that and you need to do that on the side for fun?
I find, with 2 exceptions, okay, again, these were supposed to be short stories. And to be fair, a lot of these were written for other purposes. Like one of them was actually previously released, but it was released in a limited time anthology that is no longer available. So, but I have written short stories for other stuff, and maybe it's an anthology that fell through, or maybe it was my intention to include it in a box set, but then I ran out. Of time before the release, so I just sort of didn't have it edited in time, so then I had a short story. But if it's an idea that I'm interested in and I can keep it below the 10,000 words mark, it typically only takes me about a weekend to write one of these things, and then, get them into a pile and have them all edited at the same time. That being said, there are two that ended up taking me a full week because they ended up being 30,000 words. I've taken all of them en masse and counted the word count, and it's about 120,000 words. So it's 1 or 2 novels worth of writing that I could have had 1 or 2 novels. So it's early on to see, but if I can keep them to weekend projects, I think this will be worthwhile. If I end up with repeatedly having them grow into 30,000 word novellas, maybe less so, but we'll see. I have a year's worth of them stockpiled, so I have until then to figure out if I want to keep doing it.
All right. Well, I'll keep my news kind of short since we chatted for a while there. Just wanted to say, I mentioned the last time it was a Just Us show that I was trying to do a little more on my Facebook page and actually post something every day and try to get a little more engagement, ask questions related to the genre and sci-fi and fantasy and stuff. And I found that it's working. I'm not sure if it's like I'm getting way more sales now when I mention a new book, but I'm definitely getting a lot more reach among I've got like 8,000 some likes, and before I would find like maybe 700-800 would see just kind of a status update, like here's a snippet I'm working on the new book. Now it's more like 1,700, 1,800, just on something boring like that, just a little snippet of text. And some of the questions I've just been asking, I've been like, what's your favorite spaceship from all the sci-fi series? Or, just trying to like stay within my brand basically, but still stimulate people to want to like respond and like and stuff. So, and I've gotten more like 4,000 reach on some of those. But I just thought I'd share it. It cracked me up that I've recently had my biggest Facebook reach, like 25,000 people, so way beyond my 8,000. And I know that's nothing to like real Facebook people or anybody that talks about like celebrities or something really popular, but it had like 312 shares, tons of comments and likes. And what is it about? My books? No. Star Trek? No. It's a picture I found on the internet at Friday night late of a dragon toilet paper holder. And so that's, the closest I've come to have viral anything is sharing that late night Friday.
Yeah, the closest viral thing I've ever had was me talking about my first organization snafu. That got everyone's attention, but oh well.
The closest I ever got to going viral was when I spotted a character from Craig Ferguson's old TV show as a costume, and I tweeted it to him, and he retweeted it. So it turns out, I guess, when you're talking about something that's not helpful to you is when people really want to talk about it.
Yeah, all right then. And then my only other news is that I have a new book out, as I said, but we're going to kind of talk about that in the marketing section. It's something I broke away from a series that I'm working on to write. I was just kind of inspired to do so. It's a space adventure. She gets her dog and her spaceship stolen and her android, so she's gonna go get them. I did I wanted to do, it's my autistic kind of Asperger's character that I've done a couple short stories with, and I've been hesitant to do a novel because it's the closest to me on the page you will ever find. I don't have an android or a spaceship, alas, but the rest of it is pretty darn close.
What
And
kind of dog?
she's got like a junkyard mutt, not a Vizsla,
I was curious.
She didn't mean to get a dog. There's a whole novella I'm going to talk about too that shows how she got the dog. But so, we've talked about before, like with a couple other guests, like how it's a little harder when you're writing a really close to yourself to like deal with rejection and bad reviews. Whereas if it's a character you just made up that you don't have a real emotional tie to so much, maybe it's not as hard. But then I also knew this wasn't going to be a big seller, but I did want, I guess, for there to be more stories with kind of, we used to call it Asperger's in the US. They've decided to change it to high functioning autism. But with those kind of characters, because I actually went looking for some in sci-fi and fantasy after reading The Kiss Quotient. It was a romance with Asperger's girl for a hero woman. And I really enjoyed it because I connected with the character, and like that's how I feel about romance. And so I went looking in sci-fi and fantasy, and there's like Elizabeth Moon wrote Speed of Dark probably like 15 years ago. I remember reading it in school, and it was good, but it was all about, it's like near Earth, so it's not spaceships and dragons and that stuff. So there was a dearth of stuff out there, and I was like, well, dang it, if you can't find what you want, you have to write it yourself, right? So that was this story, and it's not to market, but I'll tell you what I did to try to sell it. But I did. It's reasonably, it's done reasonably well. But let's go ahead and answer the questions I promised you at the beginning about motivation and keeping from getting distracted, as I am always distracted. But RK Thorne hit me up on Twitter and said, do you have any tips for keeping yourself from getting distracted and doing your laundry or organizing your closet while working from home? Do you guys want to answer first?
Go ahead, Joe.
Oh yeah, sure. What I do, and this I mean, dedication and discipline is not always a strength of mine. I would be a lot more productive if I could really lock in. But what has been working for me very well in the past about 6 months or so is you hear people talk about writing sprints. I do the writing sprint approach now, and I find that it's very effective. I just start a timer for 45 minutes, and I have it up. I have a split screen with the writing on one side and the timer on the other. And I'll say, like, I'm going to be doing nothing but writing for 45 minutes. And it's a lot easier to think, like, when you get the distraction impulse, like, I should get up and do something. If you look at the thing, it's like, well, there's only 23 minutes left. I can stick it through this for another 23 minutes. And then it also is like an anti-carpal tunnel thing. Like, after 45 minutes of writing, no matter what, I'll just finish up the sentence or whatever, and then I'll get up and spend 15 minutes that isn't writing. And that's when I'll go do the thing that I should, or I'll answer that email or answer that phone call or whatever. And then once the 15 minutes are up, I come back another 45 and start over again. I find that it's a lot easier to stay focused when you know, A, you only have to stay focused for a certain amount of time, and B, you know that after that certain amount of time, you have to go do something else anyway. So, well, you're just pushing it off for 20 minutes. So that's what I do.
And I thought I was the one that was easily distracted because my option would be, I mean, there have been days when I literally have to kick myself off my own Wi-Fi network, mute the phone, give the dog a Kong, distract her, or else I find it very difficult to write. But I like that idea. I'm going to have to give that a try. But yeah, so for me, I just have to do what you have to do to stay focused. Usually, like I said, I have to make sure that I put myself almost in a clean room. No outside distraction, no radio, no TV, no internet. I can't say no to the dog, but if I can just distract her for a while, then I should be able to get some stuff done. But I'm going to try this next time. Just 45 minutes. Just tune everything else out. Just focus and know if I just make it another X amount of minutes, then I can get up and look for the shiny object. But we'll see.
I've heard a lot of people fiddle with the number too. Like, I do 45 minutes. I know people who do an hour or 20 minutes, whatever is the maximum you feel you can push things off.
I'll have to think about that one.
Yeah, I know a lot of folks like that Write or Die software where it starts deleting your words and the screen starts flashing if you stop writing. That may be something to check out. I'm less likely to be distracted by the dishes and things like that than by the internet. So I will, if it's just one of those days, I just have to click, turn off the Wi-Fi, and I cannot go back on until I've done. It's, all either like 1,500 or 2,000 word blocks. I usually go by words rather than time, because sometimes they come out quickly, and my reward is that I can go wander around the house now and screw around for a bit before coming back for the next session. So some people too will find that it's a real struggle to work at home, and if you can slip off to a coffee shop for a couple hours, that can work really well for some people, especially if you have other people in the house or pesky pets. We don't know anything about that here. So I think part of it is just kind of finding what works for you. And, I think the sprints are great, or just think of being allowed to screw off as your reward for after you've done this, and then just sit down and write. All right, and then her next question was, what do you do on those off days when the story is just boring or bad and it's not coming together? Do you subscribe to the keep at it until it works method, or the go for a walk and come back method? And on this walk, do you ever get distracted organizing your closet? Okay, you better come clean my house for me, because you seem to be really into that. Cleaning is not the thing that's going to distract me. What do you guys think?
Well, I'll say that, again, when I'm doing a sprint, like, that's the thing that you talk about. If it's a word counts are useful in that if you need to hit 2,000 words in a day or 3,000 words in a day, and you know that you can do 1,000 word chunks, for example, then you have 3 chunks to do. But if you're doing time and you get stuck in a situation like this, then you might do a full sprint and only have 500 words. So that's the danger of it. What I end up doing, I am more of the take a walk thing, except because I'm doing writing sprints, I am not allowed to take a walk for 45 minutes. So I'll put down, I do this thing in my notes where I will put down 3 asterisks and then a note, I'll enclose them in asterisks. And it'll be like, add this later. And it will be a description of what I want to write there. And then I'll just move to another scene that I'm a little bit more enthusiastic about, and then go back and connect the ends later. And that way I keep my momentum going for as long as I can. If it happens a lot, I end up with a Swiss cheese story that's longer to revise later. But I usually end up going back, and then either I've had the story steeping in my mind long enough that when I go back to that scene, it flows a lot easier, or maybe the story will have evolved and I'll go back to that scene and decide it should go a different way. Or, and this happens more often than I would have expected, sometimes I'll go back to that scene and be like, this scene doesn't need to be here. The reason that it was taking me so long to write is because it didn't need to be there. It's not something those characters would do. I could lose that and just have a better pace. So I'm definitely a subscriber of the go and come back, but you don't have to actually stop writing during that go. You can just go to another scene.
Okay, as for me, there are times when it's real difficult to write. And in my case, what I end up doing, I just switch genres. I keep my notebooks next to me. So if by chance I've write myself into a corner or words just aren't flowing on the fantasy, I'll switch over to, my Corgi Case Files mystery and start plotting. Now, even though I'm actively working on the fantasy, I still, it doesn't hurt to actually keep plotting out chapters or some ideas I'd like to do for the mystery, because NaNoWriMo's coming up and that's what I'm going to be doing next month there. But so I have it there, and it's never fails. When I'm working on one genre, I get inspired to work on the other one. So as I'm working on the mystery, feeling out things I'd like to do, it's like, oh, hey, this reminds me of something similar I'd like to do over here. And usually for me, it works really well.
All right. I would say if one day you feel like it's just not working well and it's kind of boring, I'd push through for that day, because I feel like, I don't know how everyone else is. I have days where like everything sucks. I'm just in a bad mood and the story sucks, everything sucks. I'm not motivated to do anything. And then you have the next day where you're like, oh man, I had awesome workout at the gym. I was just, everything's working together. I'm getting the dishes done and the closet organized, and I wrote 10,000 words. Maybe not 10,000, but anyway, some days are better than others. But if it's consistent day after day, you're like, this story is just boring and it's not coming together, I think you need to like kind of step back, look at the story. Why is it boring you? Why is it not exciting to you? If it's boring to you, you've heard the expression, it's going to be boring to the reader. So maybe you need to add more conflict. Maybe you need some fresh ideas. I love nonfiction for coming up with just new ideas to inspire me. I actually wrote a novella based on, I saw a documentary on the maple syrup heist in Canada. I was like, that is the coolest thing that's ever happened in Canada. I need to put that in a sci-fi story. So I did. But whatever inspires you, sometimes it's other reading other fiction or nonfiction. Just maybe you need a little bit more stuff coming in to excite you and give you some fresh ideas about your story. So I would look at the story if you're feeling that way day after day. I don't believe in leaving it and then starting something new for me, because then I'll just never get back to the thing. I'm like, because the new idea is always more exciting. I want to work through it. And you mentioned walking, or like the treadmill, jogging, the elliptical, anything where you're just doing something mindless activity and you can just kind of let your brain percolate, but you've got this forward momentum going with your body. That's super helpful for me. So that is what I would recommend. And we're going to talk a little bit about advertising before jumping into the marketing, the standalone stuff. So Jeff's off camera helping his dog for a minute, but I'll ask you, Joe, are you guys tinkering? We've had all these guests on, right? We had Brian Meeks talking about the Amazon ads. Last year we had Michael Cooper talking about Facebook stuff. There seems to be a lot of people that are able to make it work, spend the money, but make more money than they spend. Is that the case for you? Are you making the Amazon ads work?
I was doing I was really giving it the college try for a couple of months. I was starting to rework my actual ad copy and stuff, and I was putting out dozens of ads, and I was making some progress. But and I actually mentioned on the episode where we asked, because I read the the Amazon ads book from Brian Meeks, and scaling was an issue for me because I got to the point where I was making, I was spending 50 cents and making $5, which is fantastic, but I was spending exactly 50 cents and making exactly $5. So overall, over the ads that I have running right now, I have in the past 6 months spent $7 and made $117. So I have a spectacular return on investment that is the tiniest of blips in terms of actual sales, so it's not that useful. And then the reason I haven't messed with it very much recently is Amazon completely revamped their stuff, and they added in that whole bid level, and all the prices started to go up. So I've sort of let what I have going, I've let them just cruise, and I'm thinking of revisiting this in a couple of months once I've started some new stuff, and I'll have like a fresh thing to advertise. But yeah, I mean, I was pleased. I was able to sneak up on clicks from the bottom and really make way more money than I spent, but in a way that wasn't enough to really be worth doing. That was my experience with Amazon ads so far.
That's kind of what I found too, is like you can spend a lot of time on it. And then you're like, is this really, even if I come out with a positive ROI, how much time to spend on it? Could I have written a whole nother novel and released it and made $10,000 on that novel in the time that I figured out how to make $400 off of my Amazon ads? So I feel like for me anyway, my most productive use of time is still writing. I actually took a good shot at Amazon ads on this new book. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money because I knew it was a standalone and it didn't lead into anything, but I thought, well, I'm going to try Amazon ads. I'll do one a night for like the 10 days of the release. And I spent about $700. I actually managed to spend money, which in the past has been a struggle, but that was only for about 150 sales at $3.99. So that's losing money, although I did, that doesn't factor in page reads. So, but how much time did I spend on this? I don't know. At least 5 hours, I would say, by the time, because I didn't have a list of keywords, so I had to go hunt down that stuff too. So I'm actually to the point where I have a couple running on book ones in like 8-book series, and the book ones are free, and I don't really care if I spend, I think I've spent like $1,000 since I started a Dragon Blood omnibus ad in August, but I got so many downloads that between that and just having it, people finding it naturally, that I'm making enough from the sales of book 4 to cover the cost of the Amazon ads, and then there's still 4 more books after that. So that's been okay to do for me, and it's really easy to get impressions on a free book and clicks, whereas it's more of a challenge on a $4 or $5 book. Jeff, have you played with the Amazon ads at all?
I haven't. It's something I'm considering doing. I haven't gotten around to it. I should, and me being lazy, I suppose, but I want to, but not yet.
Yeah, well, we were just talking about how we haven't really found it to be worth the time and, the money.
Everybody says it. Everyone I've heard about this says the same thing as that, which makes me drag my feet. Do I really want to try this? Because not many other people are actually having any luck with this. So,
yeah, well, there are some people, but they're certainly investing the time, as Brian mentioned on the show. And I'm just finding that it's maybe useful if you have a book that ranks in the million and you want to get up to ranking 200,000 in the store, like you can move the dial a little bit. But if you have other means of getting sales, if you've got to build up a big list, it may be more time useful and profitable in the long run to like hit up your list again, or focus on doing what you can to sell or give away the free book that leads people to want to join your list. That's kind of what I've been finding and what I think I'm getting back into. I'll still tinker with them, I'm sure, when I launch a new book one, but yeah, I don't think I'm going to spend too much more time on it. Is there anything else for advertising that you guys are trying right now that's actually working? I just want to, there are still things you can do. We're not saying all hope is lost. And like I said, some people certainly make the Facebook and the Amazon ads work.
Well, I can say that just on a whim earlier, I think it was late last week, about a week ago, I decided, you know what, it's been a while since I've done this. So I looked up some, I literally just Googled, perma or advertising or promotion for perma-free books just to see. And I came across a couple of ones that I hadn't noticed before. So I figured, you know what can I hurt? So I submitted a couple that I had there, and all of a sudden I started getting notices that saying, okay, well, we have these little tools that could submit it up to like 15 different places there, but your book doesn't qualify for a couple of them, but we'll send it out to 9 of them, and my downloads have jumped. So it's whatever these places are doing, they seem to be working all right with it. So So advertising my permafreeze right now is getting the interest back in some of my older catalog titles there. So that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, if you stack a bunch of the smaller, like the BookBub-esque but not BookBub ads, like Bargain Booksy and Book Barbarian and things like that, they'll all give you little blips if you can get them, and if you can stack them at a reasonable spacing, I think that you can still, intelligently boost your numbers in that way. Also, I'll say this, and it's the thing that if I get back into Amazon seriously and Amazon ads seriously, I might start with this and work my way back, because I never got to this step the last time I made my run. There's lots of talk about trying to sculpt your book description to be a little bit like ad copy itself. And if it turns out that rewriting your book descriptions is going to get people to click through a lot more, then even if you spend 5 hours doing that for each one of your books, that's not something that's tied to advertising. That's also just people browsing anytime anybody gets to your book. So I feel like, whereas I don't know if it works, it certainly seems to, based upon what we've had people talk about. I think reworking your book descriptions first might be an interesting thing to do, to see if that will just overall amplify the results of all other promotion. So I guess if and when I do that, we'll report back. But it seems like that's a thing I'm going to try.
Yeah, that's something I should do. I should go back and look at some of my backlists, especially those book ones. Maybe someday. I'm always more excited about the next project than going back and looking at old stuff. And I'm to the point now where I have so much stuff out there that I'm like, I don't even remember the story well enough to write a blurb. So that might be kind of hard. But I do agree, and that was one of the things Brian mentioned, that if you can just get more people to buy the book when they land on your page, any advertising you do is going to be more effective. And even with a free book, it's easier to get them to click and to try it, but they're still going to go, that description is not for me. All right, I am actually kind of with Jeff on this. I'm kind of finding that just going back to, this is maybe not the answer for someone with 1 or 2 books out, but when you get to the point where you've got a whole series, or you've got a backlist of multiple things, that either making one permanently free or just free for 5 days if you're doing KDP Select. I did that last month for my pen name, which has been sadly neglected. I was like, well, shoot, I have all these books. Let me see if I can get them selling a little better. So I ran a couple of the 5-day free things, and when I got a free book C, and I think that got like 2,000, 3,000 downloads of that book, and it's a book 1 in a series, so that helps. And then I had one that I just made free and announced on Facebook, and I got like 1,000 some downloads for that. I feel like despite all the free is dead stuff you hear, there are still people out there browsing the lists. There are people that subscribe to these services, bargain services, and I get the emails. So I do still think that free is really helpful. Not just on Amazon. I still find it really helpful on the other stores. And the thing I like is combining that with, okay, here you read my book for free, and then get to the end and like, oh, sign up for my newsletter, and here's this other thing you can get, and here's more books you can buy. I just feel, having just done this release with playing with the Amazon ads, when I compare that, all the effort it took to sell 150 books and how much I spent compared to the 15-minute email I wrote to my list, even though they were there for a different series, and that none of the characters were the same. I had a lot of people, I had like 500 sales when I sent that out. So obviously it takes time to build the list, but it's so worth it. Don't listen to anybody, because I hear it out there now a lot, like, oh, it's not worth it to do an email list anymore, or they're not as valuable. Just treat your list like gold. Don't send them a lot of crap. That's going to make it less valuable, right? Because people are going to unsubscribe because you're trying to pimp other people's books that you've never even read. So be really careful with those newsletter swaps and things, but definitely do everything you can to get folks on that mailing list. All right, do you guys have any more thoughts about that before we jump into marketing a standalone novel?
I do not. Nope.
All right, I will try to stop in here because I know you guys have standalone stuff you've done too, and get your thoughts. So this is the book I talked about, Fractured Stars. It's kind of I put it in space opera and sci-fi romance. I don't know, it's an adventure in space on a planet. It's one of those, it's not like alien invasion or military sci-fi or any of the hot stuff that sells, but I figured, it's a nice enough little story that some folks would be interested. And like I said, it's not to market, so that's factored into how I approached marketing it. Because the first thing well, here's the results first off. It's been out just shy of 3 weeks, 2,244 sales at $3.99. So it's more than paid for the, you know, the cost of the editing and the cover art and stuff. It was just a Photoshop cover art, so it wasn't super expensive. And then 895,000 page reads. It was like 422 KENPC for the book. So I did the math, and that's like 2,121 people who read it. So more than 4,000 sales, putting sales in quotes, for the video people, since half of them came from KU. And it's had a pretty good reception from those who read it. I was kind of touched. I had a couple people email and said, you know, I really connected to this character. So that's not something I always get. And, you know, it's dropping off. It stayed for a couple weeks. It was decently, I don't know, like 500, 700 in the rankings or something on Amazon. Dropping off now, but it's, at least it didn't plummet like a rock. So that's encouraging. And it's a standalone, but I've already had a lot of people ask for more, and I may eventually do a couple more. So we'll see. But for now, I just marketed it and counted it as a standalone. One of the things I had to decide on was pricing, because sometimes if you think a book can stick on Amazon, if it's got wide enough appeal, we've talked about this, it can be useful to launch at 99 cents just to try to get more momentum, get more people trying it. In KU, often you can get away with a higher price though, and I just didn't think I was going to get enough people buying it that it would be as worth it at 99 cents. So that's why I decided with $3.99, and I decided I'd just hit my list and try to get as many folks as I could to get it at full price. And did you guys, when you guys have done free, I know Joe's got the Pizza Oven Dragon, and Jeff, when you started your Corgi stuff, it was just, you know, the one book. Did you do 99 cents, or did you just think, you know, I'm not sure when the next one's coming out or if there'll be a next one, I'm just going to try to sell it for full price and see how it works?
I actually sold mine at full price because I wasn't too sure how well this was going to be received, because I was been writing epic fantasy for so long. I needed a change. I was like, yeah, let's just see. Either they'll like it or they'll hate it. And actually I had pretty decent sales for not really doing too much there. I mean, I made, I did my newsletter blast, and I made some announcements on social media saying, hey, here's something a little bit different. So if you're interested, if you like mysteries, cozy mysteries, along the vein of the Lillian Jackson Braun's Cat Who series. I mean, it's something along those lines there. And the only time I reduced it was when like number 2 came out. I think I dropped it to 99. And then once I put number 3 out there, I was like, okay, people are getting really good reviews and people are really enjoying it. I'm just going to knock number 1 down to perma-free, and thing shot all the way up on the charts to, I think, number 1 or number 2 on the the Cozy Mystery series. Stayed there for like 3-4 days, which got a lot of downloads. And so it pretty much took off from there. And I started rotating the perma-frees, which ones are there. But the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? They always work so well for me, just keeping them perma-free. Hence the word perma-free. So made them all perma-free, including that my mystery one there, and been doing it great ever since.
As for me, I've had a couple of standalones that are still standalones. So I've had Structophus, which is the Pizza Dragon book, and Between. And in both cases, I kept the prices lower. I knocked basically $1 or $2 off of what I would normally price a book of that length. Between was wide from the beginning, and it was just basically, it had technically been available through other means before that. It was the first time it was collected together. But so that was one of the reasons the price was a little bit lower. And Structophus started off in KU. It was the only book I've ever had in KU for a run. And I started that off with a couple of bucks cheaper too. I think it probably helped in both cases. I feel like standalones, on average, I'm going to price lower just as my policy.
All right. I didn't go any lower. Some of my stuff's been $5 lately because that's what my Patreon, they pay for the books. So I didn't want them to be less on Amazon and elsewhere than they were there. But so I went with the $4. I don't know if I'll do the free on this one at any point. It's kind of like, I want the people that buy it to actually, I don't know, it's actually got a good review average right now. You get better reviews, I think, when people really are like, oh, that is something I definitely want to read about, versus like, it's free. It was in this newsletter, let me try it. So I may not do sales on this one, although I will say that I've certainly heard from people who, like on other shows and stuff, that just launched right off at free, and that kind of gave them momentum when they went to full price. But like I said, I just wasn't sure how many I was going to sell, and at 99 cents you have to sell so many more to cover your costs, and of course the cost of your time too, you're hoping to cover, not just editing and cover art. So that was my thinking there. And I also had debated whether to go into Kindle Unlimited with this one or to go wide, because I do have my Fallen Empire series is all wide now. All my sci-fi is wide. And so I have a lot of folks on that list that found it through other sites. So I was real tempted. Every time I'm like, I'm not going to do KDP Select this time, I'm just going to launch wide. And every time I'm lured back in, for those who don't know the math, the 900,000 page reads, there's like $6,000. So, and that's just on one book in 3 weeks. So I understand completely why people keep their whole catalog in there if they're making millions of page reads every month, right? So it's a debate. I decided what I'm going to do is do 90 days, and I'm already unchecked the box. I'm not going to keep this one in, and I think I'll be able to release it wide at Christmas. So I thought, well, I can have a second launch at Christmas. But I keep going back to it because the page reads are high enough that it's like you're throwing away money if you don't do it. And of course, it helps you a little bit rank more easily if you're in there. So for cover art, I kind of debated. And what do you guys think when, if you're writing to market, if you're doing like military sci-fi, man, it's a spaceship in a battle and an asteroid belt, it's easy peasy, you know what's going to sell. When you get farther away from the to market stuff, you're kind of like, well, for me, I was like, do I do a spaceship or do I do, I decided to go with a couple, not romantic, just, in clothes, because it's not like a sexy bits kind of book. But I went with a couple on kind of a spacey background. I had the artist do a couple different versions of that. I didn't really like the first one. So I actually like how it turned out, especially for a Photoshop cover that was fairly inexpensive. I was pleased with it. But I do wish it was easier to split test covers that you could actually have to and like maybe run the Amazon ads, or, I mean, you could do a survey or a poll on Facebook. I've actually asked people before, like, which one do you like better, and find out, because it's usually not whatever you think is the best. But I don't know. What do you guys think when you're doing a cover and it's not real obvious what it should be because it's not to any particular market?
That's the thing with me. I have not run into one of those situations, because usually whenever I write a book and it's time to think about the cover, I usually like a scene or two jumps out at me and I describe it to the artist. And then, as you're saying, the artist actually gives me back 3 or 4 real rough sketches. Like, this is what he thinks it is. And usually one of them is always matched, almost always matched. The only other time I've disagreed with somebody is is my artist in when I did the Corgi files there. And he's Brazilian. He does a really good job, but he kept on drawing my dogs chunky, and I'm like, they're an energetic herding dog there, so they're slim there. It probably 5-6 times I'm like, okay, they need to drop another 10 pounds, another 10 pounds, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, let me show you some pictures here. Like, Google it, but for the most part, though, I haven't really run into that problem where I did not too sure what to write or how to depict it, so I can't answer that one.
I've run into that a couple of times. I've run into that 3 times.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, I know. Remember, my goal, my purpose on this podcast is to be the guy who does the thing wrong. So the first time, the other 8 is a standalone that I've done. Didn't intend it to be a standalone. The audience decided it would be a standalone by not buying it. But that one, it was a comedic superhero thing, and I tried to lean into that, and I gave it a very clearly illustrated cover that indicated the satire within. And
was that the April 1st novel?
That was the April 1st novel. It didn't work so well. So since then, I have been trying to, like, we talk about how the cover should express the content of the book. I tried to focus on the thing that is most interesting about the book and make that the cover. So the book Between is about, it's an isolated sensation that you feel for about the first third of the book. So I made the cover like very stark, where there's one colorful piece in the middle, and which is one of the settings, and then surrounded entirely by white. And then another one, which is the Pizza Dragon book. The interesting thing is the creature. So I gave like a very striking, again, high contrast silhouette of the character that you're going to eventually learn about, just to sort of try to draw people into the thing about the book I think is most interesting. So I think, again, like, you want your covers to represent the content, but if you aren't sure the content is going to be easy to parse, then you just have to be very good at putting something there that will still make people intrigued. That's what I've tried to do.
I'm actually not sure I did do the right thing as far as maximizing sales goes. I think probably spaceship on the front would have been it's just what sells in space opera and that sort of thing. And because I'll actually give that advice. I'm like, well, even if you're a cross genre, something that's not to market, pick something that's in there that is that's for the land use squarely in alien invasion or space opera or whatever, and then write the blurb kind of for that audience and make the cover for that audience and hope you get enough people that really enjoy the book. And so I didn't do it, and with the blurb too, I didn't try to attract anybody. I actually said, she's autistic, and because if I do another story, I really want that to come out more. This one was just an adventure that she happened to be that way. And so I didn't want anybody picking up and going, oh, this character's, wasn't into this character, and accidentally buying it because it had a cool spaceship on the front. So I'm hoping to attract the right audience that I want to read this particular book. The money was the most important thing. But, if you think you have a book that a lot of people will love and it doesn't happen to be to market, then I would say, put that spaceship on there or put that dragon on there. Because if you think they're going to love it, go for it. Try to get those people, try to make it, highlight the things about your book that will attract a larger audience.
Notably, I put a dragon on the cover, not a pizza.
You're very wise, Joe. All right. So the other thing I did, we were talking earlier about writing short stories that turn into novellas. I wrote a short story that was the backstory of how she found the dog. And this is the maple syrup heist, but on a sci-fi planet story. And it was supposed to be a short story because I knew I was going to give it away for free. I wanted to put it out around the time I was launching the book in the hope that people would try the free story and go like, oh yeah, I'm into these characters, and then go buy the book. And so I put it up on my website. It ended up being, I think, 21,000 words. So not as bad as Joe's, but I was like, oh, my short story is now turning into a novelette. And then I'm like, okay, now it's a novella. I crossed the 17,000 word mark. So I ended up putting up on my blog in 4 parts, and it was sort of a last minute decision to write it, so I didn't have time to get it edited and get a cover. I'm working on that now, but I actually had about 1,500 people come check it out on the blog and read through the 4 sections, and I had folks say that after reading it they went and bought the book. So I've recommended this before, and I think it's definitely true. Even if you're doing a standalone story, or especially if you're doing a standalone story, or if you're releasing your first book and it's going to be a long time before the next one comes out, if you can do a companion piece, a short story or a novella that you can give away for free, I think that's probably helped quite a bit with this book, to get sort of like the people that were on my list but were there for Fallen Empire. Like, why are we going to try some $4 book with other characters we don't know what like? I've got folks who will buy anything and they're awesome, but then for the folks that are on the fence, you want to get them in, right? You want to here's some new characters, check them out. And I felt like 20,000 words was actually probably good. It was enough to get them into the characters and the story and see what it was all about. And so I'm hoping to have the ebook version of the novella. I should have it ready at Christmas for my second launch, which will go out to all the stores. And I'm just going to make that free when I release it. And I hope that enough people will check it out, that it actually helps with that launch it again. And I think I've actually seen the cover. It's pretty cool. So I think it will be useful, and it will work to keep selling it. I gave you the numbers for the first 3 weeks. Of course, I hope it will continue to sell and not just disappear into the nether and never to be sold again. So definitely do something free to go with it if you're doing a standalone thing. For advertising, I've actually spent about $1,000 total. The only things I think really moved the dial was the boosted posts on Facebook. And I shouldn't say that 150 sales on Amazon wasn't useful. I'm just not sure I would bother again with making all those ads. And I will say that during the first couple came out while I was on pre-order, and I had better results so I don't know how many actually became borrows once it was released. It's hard to tell with your ACOS. It was a lot lower before the option of borrowing it was available. But I do like still doing the boosted posts first to my own audience, just because you can't reach those 8,000 people that liked you without it anymore. And then I might do a couple days later. Even with the boosted post now, you can tailor it, so you can find, I want only female readers, I want people who like Firefly, Star Wars, whatever you're going to do. So that was about $400 on Facebook, or $300 I think it was, and then $700 on Amazon, and that's it for advertising, which is a lot. I wouldn't have let the Amazon ads run if the book hadn't been selling. I was kind of like, well, $500 is gonna be my max budget for this project, but it was selling enough, that I am like, well, I'll let them keep running for a while longer. Did you guys advertise when you did the first Corgi mystery, or Joe, your standalones? Did you pay for that stuff?
I boosted some posts on Facebook, and I tried my hand with a little bit of the Facebook advertising. I didn't really see too much of a difference there, so I stopped it after about, I don't know, I would say maybe 2 months or so.
As for me, I struck Tophus. I did my first ever, my only ever BookBub ad was for that, like the actual pay-per-click ads or whatever. And that was also where I did my first, because it was on Amazon. It was Kindle exclusive at the time when you could only advertise Kindle exclusive books. So it was the first Amazon advertising I've ever done, and I think I sold one with the advertising. I had not really looked into it as deeply as I have since. But I also did do a free short story associated with it, and that was one of my first times experimenting with Insta Freebie. So we've pursued several of the same methods.
I still think that having the free story that leads in is, just way more bang for your buck. It's like a book one perma-free, right? It gets them into the series. Maybe a short story or a novella isn't as powerful as a whole novel free, but it's something to let them try it. And then you're also less likely to get people buying it that aren't going to be fans of it, because they've already tried it. They know they like the characters and your story at that point. So you're more likely to get a good reception because you're getting your target audience to read the book. I just do the usual social media stuff. I don't pay for anything on Twitter, Facebook posts. I don't think I did any snippets or anything like that in advance, because nobody knew about the characters yet, so I didn't think they would be that excited to read the snippets. I usually do those with series stuff. But like I said, the boosted post worked, and I will mention, if you don't have a following already, which is most people, right? If you're just starting out, then putting this short story on your blog is probably not going to be that useful, because I could funnel my newsletter subscribers to the blog. People read it there. I would actually, in an ideal scenario, have the short story ebook ready to just put up on Amazon at the same time, and I probably would have spent my money advertising that in as much as you can. Some places won't take like a novella, but still my favorite method. Lure them in with the freebie and then sell them the dope. All right, what else do I have here? Just even though this is a standalone thing now, I did make sure at the end to put, I actually have another short story that I happened to write a year ago I can't remember, it was just for my website for Christmas. And so at the end of the book, I'm like, sign up for the newsletter and you'll get another short story with these characters. And it's kind of reusing something you already wrote. I didn't write this one again for this purpose. So even though it's a short story, not a short story, a standalone, you still want to collect newsletter subscribers at the end, either to help you sell your next standalone, or if it does well and you're super excited and want to do a sequel, then you're not starting over from scratch with the next book. All right. So do you guys have any final thoughts on standalones you've done, or like what newsletter bonuses you're doing right now that are working?
Nothing that I haven't already said.
I'll just say that whenever I do a standalone, I find myself pushing particularly hard to the newsletter. because these are the people who I know like my stuff, and I know they've read my stuff, and I still wrote the standalone. So something about what I've written that they like is going to be in there. So I find myself, all of the things I normally do for book release, I focus particularly on my newsletter for standalone releases. And I don't do e-arcs as much as I used to, but I haven't done a standalone very recently. So back when I was doing standalones, I would very frequently do a lot more e-arcs, just so that people who are on my list who have read my other books have more opportunity to read it. And there's a greater likelihood that I'm going to have early reviews when it finally comes out. Now that Amazon gets all iffy about e-arcs and the reviews that result from those, I probably wouldn't do that part. But I definitely would spend a lot of time trying to make it clear to my fans what stuff that I've done is similar to and what elements from my other books are present in this, just to encourage fans to follow through.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I am also not doing an e-arc team or anything anymore. I've asked the Patreon subscribers a couple times to do it, and some of them are able to review, and some of them get that slap from Amazon. Nope, can't, you're too close to this author, you're friends on Facebook or something. So I've just done away with that. I did ask at the end of the book, I said something like, if you enjoy this, can you help me get the word out about it? And maybe you want to leave a review that helps other people find it. And it actually did get a lot of reviews. So considering the sales, I was very pleased with that. So just kind of to sum things up, if you're doing a standalone novel and trying to figure out how to sell it, when you launch it, be really thoughtful about the price. If it is to market and you really could see it blowing up, then it might make sense to launch at 99 cents for a week or two. Because if you can sell a lot of books over that time, you might actually stick up there on Amazon. I hate saying algorithms because people throw that around without having any idea what it means. All it means is there's like a ton of links out there, and you're in the also bots for a lot of other authors, and they see the cover and they check it out, and people want to buy it. It's all about people it's to their market, it's appealing to them, so they buy it. And but if it's not to market, like we've been kind of talking about, maybe consider just launching at full price. You can always play around with stuff later, but it's a lot easier to make your money back at $4 than it is at 99 cents. And see if you can write a tie-in novella or short story and offer it as a freebie. Can be on your website if you've got a following, but it's you could consider Insta freebie or just putting it out on Amazon and all the stores where you're going to release the book. And also go easy on the advertising until you see if it's going to sell. You don't want to end up spending $10,000 on a book that sells 1,000 copies. And then you can always, if it seems like it's going to take off, then you can funnel more money into it. And, in the end, just remember that the list is the most powerful thing you can have, and to treat it like gold, because those are the people that have read your stuff, they've bought your stuff, and hopefully they will continue supporting you, and they want to see you write more stories. And you're never going to get as excited of people that just click an ad and buy the book. Hopefully if they do that, maybe they'll turn into super fans eventually, but you've already got this list of people, so treat them really well. Do you guys have anything that you want to plug before we close out for the hour here?
Nothing that I haven't already talked about at the beginning, so everything's good here.
No, yeah, just Rogue Derelict and Patreon.
All right. I will put the link to Joe's Patreon in case you all want to check it out. I think it's brand new, and you can either support him or you can go spy on him and see what he's doing.
Yep.
So thank you for listening, everyone. Have a great week.
All right, you guys take it easy.
Bye-bye, everybody.